Ferrari are entering the upcoming GP in China with a lot of expectations after the disastrous Melbourne GP, and Vasseur's statement has relieved the hopes of the Tifosi to a whole new level. But with the MCL39 being much more competitive than we could have originally thought, can Ferrari close the gap under the vastly different conditions in China? And if so, can they redeem the glory back to Maranello? There is no doubt that Ferrari left a lot on the table in Melbourne, especially with the ruined tactics and the poor strategy from the team. However, the team is not going to dwell on these mistakes, and they are focusing on what matters most: the improvement and learning curve. The biggest strength that Ferrari has is to always keep pushing and learning, and while this hasn't proven always to be effective, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the team. The statement from Vasseur has encouraged the Ferrari fans that a lot of performance is yet to come from the SF-25, starting from the Shanghai GP onwards. When talking about this, the team principal of Ferrari said, "In Australia, we didn't see the real Ferrari. In China, we start from scratch." This is definitely a booster in the hopes of all Ferrari fans, engineers, and even the drivers. However, it's not the first time that we've heard this message from their camp. The comments are basically revolving around the fact that until we see something on the track in the form of a competitive car and a competitive duo fighting for race wins, everything else makes zero to no sense to be published or talked about. But what area should Ferrari improve when it comes to the upcoming race in Shanghai? The number one problem is probably the tyre degradation, as they were slacking off massively here compared to Red Bull, McLaren and even Mercedes. The Ferrari's troubles started with a lack of grip and the overuse of tyres, which then disabled the opportunity to enter into push mode and cover a lot of ground after the disastrous qualifying process. This is why Hamilton spent so much time behind Albon and eventually failed to get past him. And after Leclerc's statement that the team was very much off the pace on Sunday compared to their initial projections, the alarm bells might need to be rung after all. The adaptation process of Ferrari is also something that needs to be talked about profoundly. They saw themselves struggling in the changing conditions in Melbourne, and luckily for them, it's not going to be the same in China. But nevertheless, even with a clear sky and no rain on the radar, there is another aspect that needs to be heavily reworked: the communication between the driver and the race engineer, as well as between the pit wall. In one very bizarre sequence of events, Hamilton was told that the rain is not going to intensify, hopefully, whereas Leclerc was given the information that Class 3 rain is coming and it will last 2 laps. Even with this different information on their hands, the team didn't split the strategy and decided to stay out with both of their drivers. It's a blunder that can't happen in the foreseeable future if they want to see themselves at the top, and these factors are precisely why the statements of Vasseur are something that F1 fans will always take for granted. And you would have absolutely every right in the world to doubt Ferrari's statements. They haven't been able to get on top of their problems for a very long time. Now that they've entered the 2025 season as favourites along with McLaren, qualifying P7 and P8 and finishing the race P8 and P10 when they had a clear opportunity for at least one podium, is something that needs to be fixed immediately. Of course, the changing conditions made everything harder, but you didn't see Norris or Verstappen's team fumble the strategy. They did precisely what was asked from them, pit at the right time and saved their positions. On the other hand, what we're about to experience in China in terms of the weather conditions is not going to be nearly as similar as what we experienced in Australia. Much colder tarmac and temperatures varying from 11 up to 26 degrees throughout the entire weekend, without any rain anticipated so far, is what we expect in China. The weather is described as mostly sunny with clouds covering the sky on Sunday, and that should be the primary goal for Ferrari: prove that the weather in Australia is what kicked them off the groove and they can bounce back stronger than ever. Again, until we see improvement on the track, everything else is just speculation and empty talk. But the positive is that Vasseur is quite adamant in the progress that his team will make in just the second race of the season. In Melbourne, they were arguably behind Red Bull, Mercedes and McLaren, even though the pace with the Brackley-based squad was kind of matched. But if we're to look at the predictions before the season season started, and from the pre-season testing, Ferrari was supposed to be at the front and disrupting the McLarens, not fighting with Albon and Tsunoda for positions below P5. And whether we like it or not, Ferrari is on the back foot heading into China, and it's not just McLaren, the team that they are chasing right now, it's Red Bull as well. Leclerc has talked about his feelings after the Melbourne race and also talked about the current pecking order, as he went on to say, "It's been a tricky race overall, but we'll look into it. It's only the first race of the season. Yes, it's not the first race we would have hoped for, but looking forward, we need to remotivate ourselves in Shanghai and recover from what was a disappointing first weekend. If you look at the pace of the McLaren, it was unbelievable, even stronger than Saturday, for example. So we have to look into it, but we are on the back foot. But it is only race 1 out of 24. There are many other races, so we need to stay calm and keep working in the right direction." But what Ferrari needs to be careful about is the new rule change by the FIA. The rear wing flexibility has been brought under the scope of the governing body yet again, and the 2mm allowance of the rear slot has now been reduced to 0.5mm, with 0.25mm tolerance to be applied in China due to the short notice of the rule itself. From Suzuka onwards, there will be no tolerance, and if the rear slot opens more than 0.5mm, then a disqualification is threatening the cars in question. The reason why Ferrari should be worried about this is because they and McLaren are the teams who brought this into question the most, as Pierre Wash said during the pre-season testing in Bahrain that these two teams are still using the mini DRS advantage that we believed was a thing of the past. This adds even more pressure to the Maranello team and Hamilton, who scored just 1 point on his debut with Ferrari. He will look to bounce back in Shanghai, but the inevitable fact that we thought wouldn't happen has actually stepped into force. He does need time to learn the car. Yes, the conditions were very wet in Melbourne, and that won't be a problem in China, where Hamilton will have much nicer tarmac to drive his new car on. But if he and Leclerc fail to start at the front row or anywhere near it, then it could be another ruined race. This is why the 7-time world champion would like to make changes to the setup of the car and focus on what matters most, which is the knowledge of the car and the optimization of the tools they have. When talking about the changes that he would like to implement to the SF-25 in the following races, Hamilton wasn't very happy with how the car was set up in different parts of the circuit, and he also emphasised that a change in the communication needs to happen sooner rather than later. It is true that he and Adami are just beginning to get to know each other, and while the Italian did survive drivers like Vettel and Sainz, he might have a bit of trouble when it comes to Hamilton. It's just the first race, and we shouldn't judge the team so harshly after just one poor stint. But one thing is for sure, if changes don't come sooner rather than later, the team will enter a downward spiral from which there is literally no exit until the next season comes. If the situation doesn't improve sooner rather than later, then Hamilton might have to wait for the new regulations to strike for the 8th championship, and the first try at a redemption arc will be presented to the Maranello team in Shanghai. With all this in mind, what do you think about the Italian team's chances of being competitive in China? And more importantly, how do you think they will bode against McLaren and Red Bull, given that the circumstances are going to be vastly different? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the FIA's latest investigation regarding the mini DRS tricks that Ferrari and McLaren have been accused of, make sure to check out the video that appears on your screen right now.